Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. It's exactly 4 minutes past the hour of 11 a.m. When we do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda, on a beautiful Saturday, on the return of club football after the final international break of the season. For those of you that care to follow club football, for those of you that have a finer appreciation for national team football, we say you're going to have to wait until at least March 2026 for you to get the next glimpse of your favorite teams in as far as national team football is concerned and things like that. But like I love to say, it's always a pleasure to be back. And today we're going to be we're going to be going on with the continuation of what is to come in regards to the weekend across the major leagues from Europe. Good morning, LFC. Hi, how are you doing? I hope you're doing okay and that your start to your weekend is bright and sunny as it is out here in Uganda. Can't stay getting a bus to the rugby match. We wish you a safe journey and the best of luck in your game that is. And for those of you that are for our recent subscribers, the new members to the community, we say welcome to the Football Tribe UG community. It's a pleasure to have you. It's a pleasure to have you. Like I keep saying, we've hit some of our milestones, but now the sole objective is to reach 4,000 hours of watch time. So please, anytime you dedicate to watching an episode on this channel is a step in the right direction, is a step to support the pursuit of that goal. The objective, like I keep saying, or like I keep reminding you guys, is to make it to 4,000 hours of watch time and get to monetize this channel so that we can improve on our, so that we can get to improve on our delivery, so that we can improve on our setup, I would love to, have a better setup with time, but like I keep saying, it's baby steps. We'll take it one step at a time. So thank you so much to all of you guys that are regularly watch, those that are not regulars, but every now and then when you have a moment, you do dedicate an hour or so to watch our content. Thank you so much, Alex, and congratulations upon your graduation. Alex is one of our semi-regular suspects on the channel. He oftentimes is one of those guys that watches our broadcasts long after they've ended. So we do appreciate people like him and all the others that fall in the same category. Really, thank you so much. And people like LFC, people like Pedri, people like Football Royal, Peter Parker, and all the others out here. Thank you so much. Team India, we do not take your love and support for granted. We equally appreciate you a great deal for everything that you do to support what we do on this channel. So without wasting any further ado, we will get down straight into the thick of action that there is to come your way this weekend in as far as English football is concerned, in as far as Spanish football is concerned, the Italian Serie A, German Bundesliga, and of course, the French League One. But bear in mind, please, that as your teams return to action in the aftermath of the November international break, there will be midweek games in the UEFA Champions League and the UEFA Europa League, as well as the UEFA Conference League. So if you find team selections that are below your expectations, or you find things that you do not agree with, please bear in mind that your managers or respective teams could also be preoccupied with what's to come for them come midweek. For example, some of the games that will be coming midweek, we know that Chelsea will be at home against Barcelona. We know that Arsenal will be up against Bayern Munich. So really, it doesn't get more important than that. But also, they have important engagements to get to. For those of you that were part of our broadcast last night, we did preview we did preview a good number of Premier League games. We did preview the Arsenal game. We did preview the Manchester United game. We did preview the Liverpool game. No, we did not preview the Manchester United game. We postponed that to Monday since they are playing on Monday night. But we previewed the Liverpool game, the Manchester City game, as well as Chelsea. Nonetheless, we'll still have a recap on those. We will sort of re-emphasize what our predictions, what our thoughts are, the news that has surfaced in the build-up to these respective fixtures. There is great hope for amongst Arsenal fans that Arsenal could be welcoming back some of their injured players are released, as some have also gone out through injury, particularly Gabriel Magalhaes. So without wasting any further ado, I think here is the run of fixtures that will be coming your way in as far as the Premier League is concerned for match day 12. In the early kickoff at 3:30 p.m., Chelsea are up away to Burnley, Bournemouth at 6 p.m. Among the 5 fixtures that will be kicking off at the same hour will be at home against West Ham United. Brighton will be at home to against Brentford, while Sunderland will be away to Fulham. Liverpool will host Nottingham Forest, while Wolverhampton Wanderers will entertain Crystal Palace. And in the late kickoff from Saturday, Newcastle will welcome Manchester City at St. James's Park. And on Super Sunday, that's tomorrow, Leeds United at 5 p.m. will entertain Aston Villa, while the big London derby, arguably the biggest rivalry game there is in English football at present day, in my opinion, is Tottenham away to Arsenal. And then on Monday Night Football, Everton make the trip to Old Trafford. The reason as why I say the biggest is one, London being the capital of the UK, of England, of course, is the epicenter of many activities, and there's so many teams that come from London, in the larger context of London. The Chelseas, the Brentfords, the Crystal Palace, the Fulhams, so many of those. West Ham, etc. So really, it's a very big game that should be coming your way on your screens. In as far as today's game is concerned, tomorrow's game is concerned. So so very interesting action to really look forward to for those of you that are interested in all that. I think we'll start with all fairness, we will start with that Arsenal game and Tottenham Hotspurs, given the size, given the magnitude of that sort of game. We know that Arsenal are leading the summit of the Premier League table with a mere difference of 4 points ahead of a second place Manchester City and 6 points ahead of a third place Chelsea in there, with Tottenham Hotspurs coming 5th on the Premier League log. Should they be able to beat up against Arsenal, they do have an opportunity to climb up to go to 21 points, provided Sunderland, Chelsea do falter in their own engagements. But Arsenal will equally be looking to solidify their place at the summit of the league table. And like Pep Guardiola put it, the season officially gets underway. The season officially kicks off. That the 11 match days were a curtain riser, and particularly the reason as why he says that is because we came from pre-season, played 3 games, and then we went for the international break, came back, played another cohort of about 3 games, and then we went into the October international games, and then a set of 4 games, and then we went for the November break. So really, it's been a bit of a start and stop for majority of our favorite leagues. So when he says the league officially begins, because he knows they have a space of 4 months to get playing very busy, to get playing consecutive football week in, week out, with some games coming in midweek, both in the Premier League, in the UEFA Champions League, possibly in the EFL Cup for those that made it to the quarterfinals. And by the time we make the turn to January, we will have the games again in the FA Cup as well. Jesus Y815 says Uganda to win AFCON. I hope that they do win it, but they're not even among the favorites. In any case, when I was speaking to one of my seniors, Aldrin Insoga, that video is out on the channel. It's about 1 hour and 12 minutes. He did say he is concerned that we may not even make it out of the group stage, because the best we did was make it to the final in 1978, and we do find ourselves in a group that has a group that has Nigeria, 3-time champions, who last won the tournament in 2013, and Tunisia, who won it in 2004, really. And then Tanzania being our own peers who have equally never won it in the same Group C. So can Uganda win the AFCON? I can only hope. But getting back to the Tottenham Hotspur game, really, I think in regards to the implications, that is what it means on the Premier League table if either of the teams were to win. In terms of recent form, like I said, Arsenal have had it the better. They've been on really decent form. They've not lost in their last 5 Premier League games. They've only drawn 1 game. That draw coming up against Sunderland. Across all competitions, the story is not any different, because when you go to the EFL Cup, they managed to beat up against Brighton. When you go to the UEFA Champions League, they beat up against Slavia Praha by 3-0, really. So. And yet Tottenham Hotspurs, they themselves have not been doing too bad on the other side. Nonetheless, their form cannot be equated to what Arsenal have managed to do, because in their last 5 games across all competitions, they've lost 2 games. They lost in the EFL Cup against Newcastle by 2-0, and then also they lost to Chelsea by 1-0. That was in the Premier League, and then dropped top points against Manchester United, a game that they came from behind to lead 2-1, and then considered a late equalizer thanks to a goal by Matthias de Ligt. Really, you say if I was Spurs, I'll attack the whole game. I mean, what do they have to lose? Exactly, they have nothing to lose. If there's any team that has nothing to lose in the North London Derby, it's going to be Tottenham Hotspurs. I think they're going to be under less pressure. One, there's not a huge expectation that they must win the game or that they will win the game. 2, the implications of it on the Premier League table impact them less. I mean, for a team that do find themselves 5th on the Premier League log, I do not think that's too far off. The dream start when you have 5 wins and 3 draws. Really, the 4th loss would have come a little too early, and they do stand worry that Aston Villa are going to go past them, perhaps Man United, perhaps Liverpool, perhaps even Bournemouth, that they could slip as low as 9th. That's going to be a concern, and nonetheless, but I do not think it is the worst case scenario in comparison to Arsenal, who think they are title contenders, who think they are favorites for the title, or at least who the world thinks they are favorites to win the Premier League title. Now, because should Arsenal lose, like I said, and then Man City go, because actually Manchester City will have already played against Newcastle. So Manchester City's result, Liverpool's result, Chelsea's results are only going to add more pressure to Arsenal, regardless of what those results are. If all those 3 teams win, that means they get to close the gap on Arsenal. Chelsea get to reduce it to 3 points. Manchester City get to reduce it to 1 point. Liverpool get to reduce it to 5 points, if they win their game against Nottingham Forest. So really, that's if all they all win. But also, even if they were to all lose, then it also brings more pressure still to Arsenal, because they would then want to win to widen the gap that they do have against all these teams, to widen the gap on Manchester City, to move it from 4 points to 7 points, and to widen it from Chelsea from 6 points to 9 points, and respectively for Liverpool from 8 points to possibly 11 points, really. So that's going to be an objective, at the end of the day. So regardless of how the results come or go in those respective games, Arsenal will still be under pressure. Really, Tottenham Hotspurs, I mean, if Thomas Frank was to lose his first North London Derby, they could still, I mean, it's forgivable, of course, depending on how they play, because if they come and play a boring game with a low block, and they're not very intentional, and they're waiting to leverage on a set piece, then it may not sit down well with some of their fans, really. But again, I do not think that it will raise so much eyebrows, given the kind of quality they're up against, but also bearing in mind the sort of injuries that they do have, very many injuries. Jesus says, as a Manchester City fan, we might draw 1-1 to Newcastle. Now, I think a 1-all draw could only favor Arsenal and those pushing to close the gap on Manchester City. Now, a draw in that game is a possibility, but let's discuss it in a bit, in a larger context of things. But to further look at the North London Derby in itself. So that's the recent form of those teams in as far as all competitions are concerned. Like I've told you, Arsenal have won 4 across all competitions in the last 5 and only drawn 1. Same applies to their form within the Premier League. They've only drawn 1 against Sunderland. Tottenham Hotspurs on the other side, like I've told you, they lost to Chelsea, they lost to Newcastle. But also when you go back to the Premier League, you'll find in terms of their last 5, you find a 2-1 loss to Aston Villa in some of their run of fixtures during that period. What team do you support? Football is first love. Football, and like I keep saying, football comes first before anything. But my allegiances do lay with Real Madrid, with Arsenal. Yeah, but I love football first. So on any day, give me a discussion about football, even if it is not about my club, I'll be happy to jump on it. So really, anyways, so when you compare those, stats in terms of their recent form, of course, Arsenal have it the better. The question is, can they extend that form? Can they bounce back from what many looked at as a blip in that 2-all draw against Sunderland? Regardless of what your views may be about it, they would want to bounce away from that with a victory. The last thing they would want is to have another draw, because then suddenly if Manchester City win, the point gap is reduced to 2. Then also, beating up against Tottenham is always a statement win for Arsenal. As we know that in the last 5 games in this North London Derby, Arsenal have taken the lion's share and they've won 4 out of the last 5. What really Tottenham Hotspurs have managed only 1 draw in as far as the last 5 fixtures are concerned. Then when you go in the context of the same derby, in it being played at the Emirates Stadium over the last 32 games, Tottenham Hotspurs have only won once. Now, there's been a couple of draws, but still Arsenal have had the lion's share of the victories from the North London Derby. So that's the context within which both teams come into this particular fixture. That's why Arsenal favorites. That's why I think they'll do whatever it means to win this game. By the time of yesterday's presser, Mikel Arteta did reveal that Ricardo Carafiori had not yet trained with the rest of the team, that Gabriel Magalhaes was going to be out for weeks. I still do not think Arteta is good enough to win the Premier League or the UEFA Champions League. I think, like Declan Rice said, he is a very good manager, but let's talk about his legacy as and of when at the end of his career, or when he wins something and he says, of course, he's not yet won things, but he thinks he is going to win things and major things. That's the belief that lays within Declan Rice, who is an Arsenal player. A lot of people, I think, Jesus, would sort of agree with you, given the context within which Mikel Arteta finds himself. In other words, when you go back to Mauricio Pochettino, who guided Tottenham, or who was at the helm of Tottenham for a period of close on to 6 years, remember having joined from Southampton in the summer of 2014, and he managed Tottenham Hotspur, taking them to the UEFA Champions League finals of 2019, and then subsequently being shown the exit. I think in the 2021 season, yes, that's when he was shown the exit. He, up until that stage, he was merely a good coach. He was a guy that got Tottenham Hotspurs the most competitive they had been literally in decades, and still did not win them anything. He did not guide them to any form of triumph whatsoever. And then, so similarly, for Mikel Arteta, beyond the FA Cup that he won in his debut half season, he has nothing to show for it, really. So a lot of people, and this has been an ongoing debate for the right and for the wrong reasons, depending on which way you look at it, on whether Mikel Arteta is a great coach or whether he's a great manager. And a lot of people seem to suggest that he is not a great coach or he's not a great manager. Why? Because he's not won anything major. He's not won any major trophies. I think that's where they draw the line between winning and not winning. However, I will say, looking back 6 years on almost, where he found Arsenal and where he's raised them to, and Thomas Frank equally was speaking about this, although in a slightly different context, in regards to the period that he's been at the club. And he says, most people do forget that he got Arsenal competitive quite quickly and perhaps ahead of what many people may have thought, because he comes in at halfway the season, that was around December 19th, and then he guides them to an 8th place finish, which wasn't good, and then his first full season is what is predominantly remembered as the COVID-19 season, because COVID hit, and as we know, football changed the environments around stadiums. It limited a club's budgets in regards of spending, even though Arsenal managed to bring in a couple of players, including Thomas Partey. That was, I think, October 2020, and things like that, really. So people look at on that and say, okay, take away the first half and take away the first one season and a half, and push it further forward to the 2021-2022 season. And he got that team competing, really losing their first 3 games, which they lost to Chelsea, they lost to Manchester City, and I think the other was a loss to Brentford on the opening day. So once they lost those 3 games, there was a lot of tensions for those of you that care to remember. And then he won his 4th game, which was a Southampton game, and they won that game by 1-0. And from that day forth, there was no looking back. Of course, they tried to push for the UEFA Champions League places that campaign, but they fell short. And I think it was Tottenham Hotspur that beat them to the punch, or something. But a lot of managers spoke about him at the time, and I remember particularly Jose Mourinho. Even though he had beaten up against Arsenal by 2-0, Pep Guardiola spoke about Arteta quite highly and praisingly, because they sort of, as managers, I think, who had the mind eye, beyond the physical eye, they saw what he was trying to build and sort of related to it, and so this guy was destined to build something great, and I think he's on the path to that. So in the aftermath of that very campaign, 2021-2022, he then goes on to guide Arsenal to 3 consecutive second-place finishes. Now, is that good enough? Obviously, one would argue not, but because they've lost 2 titles on a whisker, the 2 of those coming against Manchester City, in 2022-2023 and in 2023-2024 in those respective campaigns. And the last season they finished behind, Liverpool. So it's a bit of a subjective debate. If you think that titles are everything that define a great manager, then obviously to you or for you, he is not within that realm or those ranks. But if there are people who look at the context within clubs and say, okay, based on where they were when he joined the team and where he's gotten them, really in comparison to what they've spent and in comparison to what they were up against, in regards to coming up against a very triumphant Liverpool side, a very dominant Manchester City, really, because those are the only teams that were better than Arsenal. Okay, those were the best teams in the Premier League when Mikel Arteta took over at Arsenal. And ever since then, there's not been any better team, because it's either been Arsenal, who have come second thrice, and on those 3 occasions, the teams that have been better than Arsenal have been Manchester City on 2 occasions and Liverpool. So really, for him having managed to close down the gap on the 2 biggest teams in the league is commendable in itself. So in conclusion, is that it boils down to what you set as your yardstick for what qualifies for a great manager, in that sort of context. So for me, I'll put the debate to that level and let you guys decide. But just to read some of your further comments, you do say that he was good for what he did for Spurs. They have a low bar. That I think there you are responding to my comments in regards to Mauricio Pochettino, who guided Tottenham Hotspur to, by the way, he guided them to a second place finish. That was in the 2017-2018 season, I think. And then the subsequent season took them to the finals of the UEFA Champions League. So I think that's what you are responding to. And then you add on to say Arsenal have a rich history and expect trophies, and Arteta hasn't won. That's true. Their rich history does presuppose that one to be perhaps graded as one of the greatest, then you must win major silverware, and he is still on the path to that. If Pep has this Arsenal team, they would have won something by now. Now, again, whereas that could be the case, I do not. I think let's not forget the context within which Mikel Arteta is operating. That this is his first managerial job. He came from being Pep Guardiola's assistant into assuming the role and the kind of team he inherited. I guarantee you not that if Pep Guardiola had inherited the same Arsenal team that Mikel Arteta inherited, he too could not guide them to any, major silverware. Nonetheless, looking at the team that Mikel Arteta has right present day, your argument that Guardiola can guide that team to a triumph, I think is reasonable. Nonetheless, the jury is still out because that same team is what Mikel Arteta is trying to win with. So let's give him the benefit of doubt or of time for this season in its entirety. And like I keep saying, we are yet to be even halfway the season. You say, you add on to say that Arteta hasn't been able to maintain a title race. They always lose. I think I'll disagree to that. When you go back to, particularly, if you go back to, let's go back to the 2 seasons where they came close to winning it. Particularly, we'll start in the 2022-2023 campaign. In that season, they lost 6 games, they drew 6. Manchester City lost 5 and drew 6. Now, the disparity was of only 5 points, Now, the season subsequent to that, that's the 2023-2024 season, they improved because the disparity between the eventual champions, Manchester City, was only 2 points. And if you do remember, after halfway the season point, in the final 19 games of the second part of the season, they only lost 1 game, and that was against Aston Villa by 2-0 at the Emirates Stadium, But they were literally untouchable. And if being unbeaten in 18 out of 19 games is what passes for not maintaining a title push, then I do not know what is. Then I clearly do not know what is. So I find that argument wanting in itself, if you are to look at the statistics. Now, I think he is capable of maintaining a title race. And he has maintained title races, by the way. He's maintained them. Again, need I have to remind you that when you go back into the 2022-2023 season, Arsenal became the first team, I think, to spend the most number of days at the summit of a league table and not win the title. That was 248 days. So again, being at the summit of the league table for that long, if that is not maintaining a title pursuit, then I do not know what is. Now, of course, in those 2 subsequent seasons, they fell off the wagon, just like they did last season in the pursuit of glory against Liverpool. They drew so many games for whatever the context, for whatever the reasons was. Of course, predominantly injuries being a part of that, and having a bit of a small squad for a title competing team. So I think that argument for me, I'll say it is wanting. If you say they cannot sustain a title race, they just can't get it over the line. In other words, they've gone on to drop points where it mattered the most. So I wouldn't call that the sustenance of it. The sustenance is the longevity of the run. Because for example, if let's say Manchester City were to win this season's Premier League title, it would have been because they have sustained the competition, albeit being behind the table leaders. So if eventually we get to, let's say, April, May, or March, and then Man City, and there's only a disparity of 2-3 points between first and second, and let's say Man City beat up against Arsenal, and then Arsenal drop second and Man City go first, it wouldn't mean that Arsenal would have not sustained the title race, nor would Manchester City. So I believe those are very, very close margins. You also add on to say that Liverpool last year was fluke. It could have been Arsenal's year. It could have been Arsenal's years. Arsenal's year. That I do agree with you. But the prevailing circumstances did not do Arsenal any favors. Like I said, they had so many injuries. You remember Martin Odegaard being out for 2 months with an ankle injury. He wasn't the same player when he returned until very late on the season when he had started to pick up. Bukayo Saka was out for about 3 months with a hamstring injury. You remember Kai Havertz was out for almost 4 months with a hamstring injury. You remember Gabriel Magalhaes got injured with a hamstring injury in their 2-1 victory in February against Fulham. So you remember Ben White had to undergo a knee surgery. You remember Jurriën Timber, after being knocked out of the UEFA Champions League, he underwent an ankle surgery because he had been playing through an injury just to sustain their push for at least the UEFA Champions League title or push to reach the finals. So really, they had so many injuries that happened within that team in an already narrow squad. So that's why the circumstances, particularly this season, are quite different. And I've also argued this, that no matter how good you are as a team, when it comes to winning the Premier League title, when it comes to winning any league title for that matter, that you need more than just hard work, because you could have all the hard work and a few unfortunate things befall you, and suddenly you do not win. Again, when you go back in the very competitive years of Pep Guardiola alongside Jurgen Klopp, on 2 occasions, Liverpool finished second with just a single point behind Manchester City. And with those points in another given season, at one occasion, Manchester City won it with 98 and Liverpool had 97 points. Now, out of the last 4 seasons, those 98 points, actually, you would argue, out of the last 5 seasons, those 97 points that Liverpool finished with behind Man City were worthy of winning a Premier League title in all the other 5 seasons. Then on another occasion, Manchester City, I think that was 2021, 2022 Premier League season, I think that's the season. Manchester City win the Premier League title with a tally of 93 points and Liverpool had 92. So you can see how close it was. It can be a game of fine margins. Then, where you also need luck is sometimes you could have a bad officiation of a game where a referee awards a dubious red card or a dubious penalty, a bad decision for which the pitch mole could apologize in the aftermath of the game, but still wouldn't change the result or the context of the league, really. So for you to win a Premier League title, it goes beyond just your hard work. Also, your competitors, because you're not competing against yourself. I think the only season, we have to go back to to 2 particular seasons in recent memory. You have to go back to the 2017-2018 season when Manchester City won the Premier League title with 100 points, and the disparity between them and the second place team was huge. And then you go back to the 2019-2020 Premier League season when Liverpool won the Premier League title and were, I think, 18 or 19 points ahead of Manchester City, who finished second. And the subsequent season, things like that, really. So there's a lot that goes in there. There are a lot of considerations. So for me, winning the Premier League title, which in itself is a marathon, is not a case of, this one was a good and all the others were bad. No, really. You are good, but also you are lucky. One, you are lucky that you got away with some decisions, good or bad. You are lucky that you did not sustain as many injuries, perhaps, to your key players. And for example, you said that Liverpool last year was a fluke. Take Liverpool in the context of last year. Give them the injuries that Arsenal had to contend with their key players and hand them over to Liverpool. And ask yourself the question, would have Liverpool still won the Premier League title? My easy answer to that is an absolute no. Last season, put out Mo Salah through injury, put out Virgil van Dijk through injury, put up Luis Diaz and Cody Gakpo, and then suddenly, or Ryan Gravenberch, and Liverpool would have been nowhere near the Premier League title. So there's a lot that comes with winning a league title, beyond just the depth of your squad, beyond just the quality of your squad, so there's that. But also, let's not forget, Mikel Arteta has not had the experience of winning a league before, of sustaining a title pursuit before, really. So I'll leave that at that. You also go ahead to say, well, Arsenal have always had injuries, but good managers know how to play around risk. If Saka gets hurt, Arteta can't do anything. That's not the case. We saw it happen this season. I think after the first 2 or 3 games of the season, he suffered a minor hamstring injury and he was out, I think, for about 3 weeks. And Noni Madueke was there to replace him, and he played really well in that period. So now that's squad depth. That's the beauty of having, the quality in the squad. And you keep saying that you can play around with injuries. Go back to that great Manchester City over the years. Yes, they did have injuries, but because they had the squad depth, they had the squad quality, they were able to replace those players. I think particularly in the 2023-2024 campaign, people forget that Kevin De Bruyne spent a significant time or period out through injury. But because Manchester City had the quality of players to replace him, it did not hurt them that much. They managed to keep on winning. Now, for some teams, that's not the case. When you lose your key players and you do not have the squad depth and quality attached to that squad depth, then you're bound not to compete. That's just what it is. That's just what it is. You're bound to suffer. You're bound to suffer. We know that to be the case. So you say KDB got hurt in the UEFA Champions League final and Pep found a way to win against Inter. Again, look at how they won. By a single goal, by one moment of brilliance, with Rodri scoring that goal. But still, you're talking about a Manchester City who had won a treble that season, who had electric players like Phil Foden having his best season. Jack Grealish had his best season in a Manchester City jersey in that same year, So really, regardless of losing KDB, they still had the quality within the squad to go ahead and compete, even without KDB, You say Klopp proved he could win trophies. He won everything, released going toe-to-toe with City. Again, go back and look at the squad depth and the quality that he had, Jurgen Klopp. And again, Jurgen Klopp could have won more. Like I've said, on 2 occasions, he came second with just a point behind Man City. And the point tally with which he came second in those 2 respective seasons, out of the last 5 years, those points were winning you a Premier League title. But he did not have the luck. He did not have the luck on his side. When you go to 2019-2020 season, when they eventually win the Premier League title under Jurgen Klopp, he bettered Pep Guardiola with a tally of 18 points. So, meaning Manchester City, they themselves had fallen far off their own standards. So, like I said, as you create your own luck, as you do the hard work, there are certain things that have to play in your direction. Again, go back to last season. Every time Liverpool dropped points, suddenly those that were trying to push them for the league title equally dropped points. That is luck in itself. That's a weakness in your opponents. It's not your own making, because if you drop points and then your competitors win, then you're not going to win. Then you say it just seems like Arsenal can play good August to February, but then lose all in March. I think that's I would say that's like I said, I would argue against that. When you go back in the 2022-2023 season, yes, they started falling off, I think, around April in games against West Ham, Bournemouth, and Southampton. Actually, it wasn't Bournemouth. It was Nottingham Forest. It was Brighton. It was West Ham United. Those set of games. So I think, and again, when you assess them, you'll notice that they've improved on the way they go about certain things in certain periods of the season. Then when you come to the subsequent season, 2023, 2024, again, when you look at the data, it will show you to the contrary of your own argument in that regard. As Liverpool fans, this is Lana. Sorry, Lanram. Lanram or Lana. Says, as Liverpool fans, this season, Arsenal and City title race, Liverpool are not. Again, to speak to that, I think like Arsene Wenger put it, that when you're pursuing for the title, you're not allowed to lose 5 games by November. If you lose 5 Premier League games by November, then you're out of the Premier League, title race. You need to lose 5 games by the end of the season, not by mid-November. So I do understand and acknowledge the kind of argument that you make in that comment, but also because there's no guarantees that then Liverpool are suddenly going to win the remaining maybe 27 games of the season without defeats. Maybe their other competitors will be losing points in that run. True, there is some luck involved when winning a Premier League, but when Liverpool and City are the only ones that have won it since 2018, it's for a reason. Again, yes, it's for a reason. Like I said, you build a good squad, and on building that good squad, it comes with a collection of things. It comes with a collection of players' experience. It comes with a collection of players' maturity. It comes with the quality of players. It comes with a certain relentlessness of going again and again. You see, let's not forget, Jurgen Klopp took over Liverpool in October 2015. He won his first Premier League title and his only Premier League title in 9 years in 2020. In other words, if he was at Liverpool for 9 seasons, that means he missed out on the league title on 8 different occasions. Pep Guardiola has been immaculate. He's in his 10th season. But let's look back at the last 9 seasons that have been complete. He's not won it in 3 of the 9 seasons. Of course, in a report card, that's very good. But let's not push it like he's been perfect as well. Go back to his debut campaign, 2016-2017, when Chelsea go ahead to win the Premier League title, with the squad he inherited. He had to make improvements on that to go and on and set records, So yeah, there is a number of factors. Arsenal have the team depth, so why can't they win? Again, it's not yet the end of the season. We can debate this at the end of the season, because the squad depth that you're talking about is one that they built this summer. So we cannot judge it barely halfway the season and say they've not won anything. What has there been to win that they've not won at this stage in the season? Because if the season were to end here, they would be crowned champions. If the Carabao Cup final were to be played tomorrow, which is still at the quarterfinals, maybe they go ahead and win it. If the UEFA Champions League, final were to be played on Wednesday between the 2 leading teams in Bayern Munich against Arsenal, they would be in the final. If you are to judge them by their own measure of only this season, by this stage at which we are. So we cannot make the argument of why can't they do it now that they have the squad depth before we even get to the end of the season. That argument does not stand, really. I think you'll find it equally inefficient that way. You could say if Unai Emery managed Arsenal, they might have won the double. But they did not. They did not. And he did manage Arsenal. He took them to Baku in the UEFA Europa League final and got walloped by Chelsea by 4 goals to 1. For those of you that remember, Eden Hazard, immaculate in that game. Pedro was one of the goal scorers in that game. Olivier Giroud scored against his former team. Peter Cech was shambolic in that game. I think Arsenal's only consolation might have been scored by Alex Iwobi, And then the subsequent season, which was the 2019-2020 season, things started faltering for him. Now, I, for one, I do not begrudge Unai Emery for not perhaps taking Arsenal to the heights that many had hoped, because I understood the circumstances within which he acted or within which he played, because he came in and for some reason Arsenal wanted a quick fix of everything that had gone wrong in the latter years of Arsene Wenger to be quickly fixed by Unai Emery, and it did not happen to the way they wanted. That's why they looked themselves in the mirror and said, okay, let's hit the reset button. Let's go with a young manager, a novice, and build our own project, and we will take our own time, and that's what they've done with Mikel Arteta. So that project is what has now reached maturity. But the climax of that project should be winning major titles. And that is why now everyone is suddenly demanding Mikel Arteta of that, you say, okay, you say COVID Arsenal are known as a banter club, and Arteta didn't change that transfers have, for example, Odegaard, Timber, and Gyökeres. Again, like I've explained the situation of COVID-19. COVID-19, the only favor COVID-19 did maybe Mikel Arteta was spare him the wrath of the Arsenal fans at a period when they suffered the most. But even when they were at their lowest, you did not hear any rumor whatsoever from within the corridors of power at Arsenal that his job was on the line. Why? Because they trusted the process that he had told them he was going to take this team through. They decided to invest in the project. But like I told you, COVID-19 came with a lot of things. It dented teams' finances, and clubs were signing lesser players and were investing less because the future was very uncertain at that stage. And that was his first full season of taking charge of that Arsenal team, So if you don't remember, when he comes in the January transfer window, he signs Pablo Mari because he needed a left-footed centre-back. In the summer, he goes on to sign Gabriel Magalhaes, who everybody is ravishing about present day. He brings in the likes of Thomas Partey. We know what Thomas Partey was for that team, until his departure. So again, you ought to have a certain level of objectivity to look at things within the context in which they happened. I do not think that COVID only impacted Arsenal. No, that wasn't the case. If you do remember, Liverpool also signed very few players, and among those few players they signed was the late Diego Jota, because he comes in 2020. So you say, now Jurriën Timber comes in at the start of the 2023-2024 season. What happens? He suffers an anterior cruciate ligament injury in that first game against Nottingham Forest. So he's out for the largest chunk of the season until last season. That's when we got to see, Timber's impact. Now, that is the luck I'm talking about. He did not have that luck. Go to Mikel Merino himself last season, who chipped in with all the goals that guided Arsenal to reach the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League. As soon as he walks in that door, he gets a shoulder injury in training. That's unfortunate for a player that was supposed to be acclimatizing to the league. That did not help. Then you bring fast forward Gyökeres. He's a recent summer signing. You talk about Martin Odegaard. Like I've said, Martin Odegaard over the last 3 years has been one of Arsenal's best players. In fact, one of the absolute best, bar last season when he had that ankle injury for which he struggled to recover from. And when he eventually returned, he wasn't the same player. He started to pick up at the tail end of the season, but it was a little too late, for those of you that remember. Then you talk about the EFL Cup and Community Shields. I do not count. Now, I did not mention the Community Shield. Realistically, has won 2 of those. That's why I did not bother mentioning that. Now, the EFL Cup counts. Why? Go back to Newcastle last season. They won their. Do you know what the headlines were reading? Newcastle won their first major title in 71 years. What title did they win? The EFL Cup. Pep Guardiola won the EFL Cup 4 consecutive times. It is still a title. You remember when Liverpool won the double? When Liverpool won the cup, that was 2024, beating Chelsea in the final by 1-0. That's the only trophy they won. It is a title. Of course, it is not at the same level as is the FA, as is the Premier League, as the UEFA Champions League. That's the grading of titles. Even when you go to Spanish football, they will never tell you that the Supercopa Hispana is as big as the La Liga. It is not as big as the Copa del Rey. It's just what it is. These competitions are graded in tiers. That's just what it is. I'll simply put it that way. That Arsenal team was different than today. Give Unai Emery team today. Exactly. That's what I've spent the whole time, explaining, to say that look at the team Mikel Arteta inherited and what he's built. And that's why you're now standing where you are, demanding him of titles, because he's suddenly been able to build that kind of team, which you're saying that give it to Unai Emery and he will win a title with it, which you're saying give it to Pep Guardiola to win a title with it. Give Mikel Arteta, who has built it, the chance to win a title with it. He has been building it up until this stage. Like I said, we cannot demand a trophy barely halfway the season. There's not been any cup finals. In a few weeks' time, when they get to play Crystal Palace, possibly in a month's time, in the EFL Cup quarterfinals, and he gets knocked out, that will be making the case. Why are you not winning that? Because for me, I said, and I've made this argument before, and allow me to repeat it, the EFL Cup is a very, very important piece of silverware. Why? Not because it is the biggest of trophies, but for a team like Arsenal that have not won, that want to build a winning mentality, that's a good stepping stone. That's where you start. Win that, because the final of that comes in as early as February. Go win that and then move on and push for the next. That's what creates belief. That's what creates momentum. Like I've told you, go back to 2018, the first trophy that Pep Guardiola wins is the EFL Cup before they win the Premier League title. So it is not of the same size as the Premier League title, but it is still a title anyway. It is regarded as a major trophy in as far as English football is concerned. That's just the nature of it. I guess second place is good enough for Arsenal fans. No, again, I've said this. Second place is not good enough. You want to win titles. That's what big teams are for. It's like you're not hearing, it's like you're hearing only bits of the conversation. I've said this. Look at where he's come from. Look at the kind of team he's built. And coming second 3 consecutive times. Every time he's come that, first of all, in the 2022-2023 campaign, nobody had expected Arsenal to be anywhere even in the title conversation. Go back and review whatever people were saying at that time. And if you're honest enough, you'll come back and tell me, yeah, nobody looked at Arsenal as title contenders. They surprised everybody. Eventually, they did not win it. They lacked the experience. And again, if you do remember, they go on to suffer significant injuries to Takahiro Tomiyasu, to William Saliba, to Thomas Partey. Now, Tomiyasu and Saliba's injuries came against Sporting Lisbon when they were playing in the UEFA Europa League. Those were significant players, and their season faltered. So then, now, when they came second, the subsequent season, that's when people said Arsenal will be title contenders. They were not even saying they're going to win it. They simply said they are title contenders. Why? Because they believe Manchester City was still stronger as a team, as a collective, given the experience of Pep Guardiola. They believed that, Arsenal will compete, but they will not win it because of Pep Guardiola, because of Manchester City. Look at what Manchester City have. Look at their quality. Look at their depth, And guess who won it? It was still Manchester City, Like I said, it's been a journey over the last 6 years for Mikel Arteta to build the kind of team that he's built up until today. And again, he's gone through steps. Like I said, in his first half season, he finishes 8th. Subsequent season, finishes 8th. Not good enough. His second full season, which many people want to argue is the third season, where do they finish? They finished 5th. That's an improvement from 8th. Ever since finishing 5th, they've not finished 3rd, they've not finished 4th, they've only finished 2nd. So if you do not see the signs of improvement, if you do not see the signs of progress in that, then there's no better way I can put it for you. There's no better way I can put it for you. Like I said, if you want to draw comparisons, go back and look at Jurgen Klopp, very experienced manager, had won 2 back-to-back, Bundesliga titles, I think in 2012 and 2013, or 2011, 2013. During that time, he comes in with that Liverpool side. And look at the transformation he had to take that team through until they won the UEFA Champions League title in 2019. Look at that. People forget that he made it to the UEFA Europa League final and he got schooled by Sevilla. The same Sevilla that were under the charges of Unai Emery, they got beat. Was it 3-0 or 3-1? People forget that. People forget that. So, and just slightly back about the EFL Cup. Guess what major trophy he won in his debut campaign? It was the EFL Cup for Eric Ten Hag at Man United. Then the subsequent season, he won the FA Cup. So it depends on how you look at things. Well, everyone in the top 6, even Spurs, has won a trophy in the last 5 years, except who? Arsenal. You see, now you're reducing the debate to that. The same thing we've been explaining. Is there a luck in winning the EFL Cup? I'm not saying you do not get luck in by winning the EFL Cup. My point was, for you to build a winning culture, a winning spirit, a winning momentum, you begin with whatever is available for you to win. Some people have said winning the Community Shield is a sign of bad luck. Should we believe in superstitions? No. You want to build a winning culture, a winning mentality. I've given you, go back to Pep Guardiola's first trophy with Manchester City. What trophy was it? Was it the Premier League trophy? Because that comes at the end in May or April when you suddenly clinch it, But finals had been played in the EFL Cup. He had lifted that one first. So let's not forget that. You said, okay. 2022, 2023 can be excused. But after that, Arsenal have experience in the title race and they can't win. They have experience based on what? Based on one good season that nobody believed they were even going to contend. Really? So you can comfortably sit and compare the Arsenal that went into the 2023-2024 campaign and say they were better than Manchester City? Pound for pound. Look at those players and tell me how many Arsenal players you'd move from that Arsenal team and they would start in that Manchester City team. Give me, enlist for me those players. Let's have that discussion about the squad. Right from the manager, who would you rather manage your team? Is it the experienced Pep Guardiola or Mikel Arteta, who has never won it? We are talking about specifically 2023-2024 season. Let's make the argument. Let's go through those players. Would you start Martin Odegaard ahead of Kevin De Bruyne? Would you have started Thomas Partey ahead of Rodri, a Ballon d'Or winner at the time? Would you have started Kai Havertz ahead of Brad Erling Haaland? Is that the argument you want to make? Let's have the debate on now the quality and the squad depth and the quality. And then we can discuss experience. But also, if we have to talk about experience, if you're comparing a person that came second and the person that won, who do you say has better experience at the winning? It's the person that won. So we cannot make the argument that then suddenly, because they had competed in that season and come second, then suddenly they were more experienced than Manchester City. Like I've told you, when Mikel Arteta takes over at Arsenal, Liverpool and Manchester City are the best two teams in the Premier League. And for all the time he's been at the helm of Arsenal, who has won the league title? Why hasn't Man United come out and won the league title? Why has it not been Chelsea? Why has it not been Tottenham Hotspur? Why hasn't it been anybody else other than those two? Because when you look at the league table, it's not like Arsenal are the only ones competing for it. Everybody competes for it to win it, but only one can win it at the end of the day. So where are all those? So you must acknowledge that the teams that have beaten Arsenal to the Premier League title are the teams that were better than Arsenal from the get-go. From the get-go. That's just point blank. That's flat out open. That's the honest thing. Apologies on that. So That's just what it is. It's the outright truth. You know, you say Klopp proved himself before making the UEFA Champions League final versus Bayern before joining. Yeah, he proved himself. He came with the experience. And even then, Klopp was dubbed as this unlucky guy because he never wins a final. You know, he had played a handful of those, including the Europa League final. He took Liverpool to the finals of the UEFA Champions League, and they lost to Real Madrid twice. You know, twice. You forget that. So, can we say he did not win because he did not have the experience? No. Real Madrid were just better on the day. They were just better. So, we cannot just simply say, oh, Klopp is a loser because he lost two UEFA Champions League finals to Real Madrid, and while at Dortmund, he lost another, to what was it? I forget the retired gentleman that was at the helm of Bayern Munich. Is that the kind of argument you want us to make? How different would we be from a regular fan who, watches the game? So Crystal Palace are winning the FA Cup means they are they are contenders now. Contenders for what? For the FA Cup, because they are the reigning champions. They are contenders. They are contenders for the EFL Cup because they've made it to the quarterfinals. And Liverpool have not. And Man United have not. They are contenders for that because that's where they're competing. I did not say that when you win a cup competition, you become a Premier League title contender or a league title contender or UEFA Champions League contender. For example, people make the argument of Spurs winning the UEFA Europa League last season and Arsenal did not win, as if Arsenal were equally competing in the same competition with Tottenham Hotspurs. No, they were not. People say Chelsea won the UEFA Conference League, it's like saying Chelsea are better than Barcelona because Chelsea won the FIFA Club World Cup, a competition that Barcelona never got even to play. Again, let's not be simplistic and sort of cynical in our arguments, really. Let's be realistic. So, are you saying that Chelsea, by measure of last season, performed better than Barcelona, who won a domestic treble and reached the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League, just because Chelsea won the UEFA Conference League and also won the FIFA Club World Cup? Is that what you're saying? Are you saying that because Chelsea beat up against PSG in the finals of the FIFA Club World Cup, then suddenly they had a better season than PSG, who won the UEFA Champions League title, who won the Coupe de France, who won the French League One, and the Trophy des Champs? Are you saying they are better? Is that the argument you want to make? Really? Honestly? Is that the argument you want us to have? Certainly not. Certainly not. Are you trying to tell me that why did Inter Milan not win any trophy last season? And then we say, but you see, Chelsea at least went and won the UEFA Conference League. Inter Milan wouldn't have won the Conference League because they were not competing there in the first place. So the argument that people make that, oh, look here, Tottenham Hotspurs. No, okay. Why didn't Tottenham Hotspurs win the Premier League title? Because they were equally competing in that. Why didn't they win the FA Cup? Why did not they win the EFL Cup? Because they were equally competing in that. So the comparisons that we want to make about trophies that are there, yes, I can listen to the argument of Crystal Palace who are better because they won the FA Cup. They were better than Arsenal because Arsenal got knocked out and they never made it thus far. I can listen to that argument. But if you draw comparisons between teams that played different competitions and won differently, then it does not hold water. Not in my opinion, at least. Not in my school of thought. For argument's sake. It's like comparing apples and oranges. So my argument is not that if you win a cup, then you become a league contender. No. We all know that when the season starts, there's only going to be a couple of teams that compete for the league title. We know that when the season starts, there are teams that are going to be fighting for a mid-table place finish. There are teams that are going to be battling relegation. There are teams that are going to be fighting for whatsoever. It's just the context. It's just the hierarchy of football. How many times do you see outliers, like going back in 2016 when Leicester City win the league title? When Leicester City win the league title, are you trying to say that suddenly Man City because Man City had just won it in 2014? Are you trying to say Man City, Chelsea, Man United, Liverpool were not in the league at that time? Is that the argument you want us to make? Certainly not. So, like I said, you ought to only be objective enough to look at things in the context in which they are and make fair judgment. If your judgment in itself is biased about a certain team, then you're not going to make an objective decision or an objective argument. So look at things in the context in which they happen and decide for yourself. Like I've given the examples. Would you say Barcelona had a lesser season compared to Chelsea? Would you say PSG had a lesser season compared to Chelsea just because they got beat in the final by 3-0? Really? Would you make that argument if you're being honest enough, if you're being honest to yourself? Well, in the beginning of the Europa League last year, I do not think everyone has Spurs winning it all, but they end up winning. It's not about who you think will win, because those are predictions. Those are hope, those are wishes. As a Liverpool fan, they would hope they win every piece of silverware there is to win this season. And in any case, how many people at the start of the season told you that Liverpool were the favorites? Including myself, I made the same argument that Liverpool were favorites to win the Premier League title. We have yet to conclude November, and we're saying suddenly that because they've lost 5 games in the Premier League, then suddenly they're out of the Premier League title. I've argued this, that mathematically, it appears they're still in the league title race. But being honest, you do not get to lose 5 out of 11 games and still think you're going to push for a Premier League title, unless you're saying you're going to be so lucky that all your opponents will lose just as much, and then you get ahead of them. So it's not about who we thought was going to be favorite or who was going to win it. Like I've just told you, go back to 2015, 2016. Nobody thought that Leicester City were going to win the Premier League title. Did you think they were going to win it? No. I did not think. And if you're honest enough, you'll say you did not think so. So it's not about who we thought would have won. Again, when we go back to last season, Liverpool was, I do not think there's so many people that would comfortably sit before us and say, yeah, when last season started, I knew Arne Slot was going to win the Premier League title. No. You'd be lying, Unless you're a Liverpool fan who wished and hoped that they would win, go back to the predictions, whether it was with the supercomputer, whether it was the favorite, pundits, analysts, and commentators. They did not give Liverpool the chance. They thought Manchester City, given that they had won 4 consecutive Premier League titles, who looked like they would dethrone them. Some thought maybe it was going to be Arsenal's year, like we've assessed. It eventually wasn't, and Liverpool won. So yeah, when it comes to predictions, we all make predictions. Do all come to reality? The simple answer is no. It's just what it is. They're just predictions. So even last year, no one thought Palace were exactly. Nobody thought that Palace were winning the FA Cup. I'm sure at the start of the EFL Cup, at the 3rd or 4th round, not many thought that Newcastle were going to be the eventual champions, but they still won anyway. They still won anyway. Inter still have 4 competitions. Inter still have 4 completions, just like Chelsea, and Inter couldn't capitalize to win any of them. So Chelsea had a more successful season. I leave that debate to you. I leave that debate to you. So, because what you're practically doing there is you want us to compare teams that play in the UEFA Champions League and teams that play in the UEFA Conference League. So let me ask, if Inter had played in the UEFA Conference League, do you reckon they would have won it? And do you reckon that if Chelsea of last season had played in the UEFA Champions League, they would have won the UEFA Champions League? If you reckon that you are going to answer to the affirmative of both questions, then Chelsea had a more successful season than Inter. I'll listen to that. Chelsea did have a more successful season than Barcelona because Chelsea won harder competitions, Club World Cup, harder than La Liga and Copa del Rey. I disagree, totally, 100% disagree. You know, you see, what? You're telling me Chelsea had a better season because they beat up against Fluminense, they beat up against Pyramides. Really? No. There will disagree on opinion. And so was PSG. So, between Chelsea and PSG, who had the better season? Let's answer that. Exactly. They did dominate in that game, in the final. So, are we to say that because they dominated in that one game and won the trophy, that Chelsea had a better season than PSG? That suddenly Chelsea are a better team than PSG? Is that the argument? Again, that in itself is subjective. So, are you of the argument? SuperTube, what's up? There's somebody, what was his name here? I think to, but anyway, a great discussion. But whether you agree or disagree, those are my views on that. And anyways, for me, I said my prediction for Tottenham versus Arsenal is going to be 2-1 in favor of Arsenal, given the recent happenings in the fixture. I know both teams struggle with injuries. But Tottenham have it, I think, the worst when it comes to injuries. They have so many injuries. James Maddison, Dejan Kulusevski. Last I checked, Randall Colomwani himself was struggling with a jaw injury. Lucas Bagville had been out with a head injury. We know that Pape Matsa had been a doubt for that particular game because of he had been withdrawn through injury in their game against Brazil. That's Senegal, the friendly game. We know for a fact that what's his name? Yves Bissouma has been out through injury. Radu Dragsson has been out for a very long while through a knee injury. He had only just returned and then he suffered another injury. Kota Takai suffered an injury. So Muhammad Kudus, one of their better players who had a very brilliant start to the season, registered 4 assists. Dominic Solanke, their target man, has been out through injury. But like I said, Arsenal have had their fair share of concerns of injuries, but given the kind of squad depth and quality that they have within their squad, I think they will be the lesser worried of the two sides when it comes to injuries. So really, that's what sort of tilts me to saying that Arsenal will carry the day when it comes to tomorrow's London Derby. Do let me know if you have contrasting opinions. I wanted to go back to somebody's comment. I think it was regarding. I think it was regarding Manchester City and the draw against Newcastle. Yes. Let's move on to that game quickly because Manchester City, like I said, they do come in the late kickoff on Saturday at 8:30 p.m. A good debate. I wish we could talk to each other in real time. Maybe one day we'll get to arrange that. Newcastle have had a very, very poor start to the season. In regards to the Premier League. In the UEFA Champions League, they've been doing well beyond losing to Barcelona in their debut game of the season. I think they lost that game by 2-1 or 2-0 thereabouts. I stand to be corrected on the correct score. They've done well in as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned, but the same cannot be said for them when it comes to the Premier League. In the Premier League, they've really, really struggled. They've lost 2 consecutive games, losing by 3-1 against Brentford in their last game, against West Ham prior to that. So really, things have not been easy or easy peasy for Newcastle. When you look at their head-to-head in terms of the last five, you'll find that Manchester City have equally dominated that fixture. There's only been one draw. Manchester City have won the other four. I think it was a 1-1 draw last season at St. James's Park. Really, Newcastle got beat by 4-0 in the reverse fixture. So yeah, you predicted a 1-1 draw between Newcastle and Manchester City. A draw is a huge possibility, but last I checked, Newcastle had very, very major concerns on Joelinton and Sandro Tonali in regards to their availability in that midfield. And I said this in yesterday's preview that, excuse me, should it be the case that Newcastle are without those two players in midfield and they have Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Willock, and possibly Morgan Rogers to play, Jacob Ramsey to play in that midfield. I keep confusing between Morgan Rogers and Jacob Ramsey, but Morgan Rogers to play in that midfield, then Manchester City will comfortably win that midfield battle, whether it's Tijani Reinders and Nico Gonzalez alongside Bernardo Silva or Phil Foden or whichever. Manchester City will win that midfield. And once they win that midfield, then it's going to be a long afternoon or evening for you if you're a Newcastle side who are really, really struggling to inspire themselves to victory in as far as the Premier League is concerned. Of course, out of the last five, they've managed, I think, 2 victories against Nottingham Forest by 2-0. Those goals scored by Bruno Guimaraes and the penalty by Nick Voltmada. And then they beat up against Fulham by 2-1. But they had lost to Brighton in between there. And like I said, they've lost the other last 2 games. In sheer comparison, Manchester City have been in stellar form, losing only 1 game in their last 5. That loss coming against Aston Villa by 0-0. But they beat up against Brentford, Everton, they beat up against Bournemouth, and most recently, in recent memory, thumping Liverpool by 3-0. Jeremy Doku had a very, very excellent game, and he carried that sort of form into the international break. I saw him scoring, I think it was against Liechtenstein. He scored, I think, a brace in that game. So really, he's going to return in that sort of spirit. Very positive-minded. Manchester City do not have many injuries. They only have 2 injuries in Mateo Kovacic and Rodri. So that excuses them. That means their core squad is going to be available. Usually for me, the challenge, and I've said this, while he does it for the right reasons, sometimes Pep Guardiola on a given day could choose to overthink a game and let's say not pick a Jeremy Doku who everybody thinks is in very good form. Do you know French? No. The only French I know is bonjour. And is it merci? Is it merci or merci? Merci beaucoup. Thank you. I do not know French. I won't lie to you. But yeah, so really, for me, my prediction is that Manchester City will win 2-1. But for all those that make the argument of a 1-1 draw, I suddenly cannot rule that out. Like I said, last season that was a score at St. James's Park when the 2 sides met. It was a 1-1 draw. Goals came from a penalty by Anthony Gordon. Really, Joško Vardiol had scored to give Manchester City the lead. But also, because Manchester City have gone to St. James's Park and won there before, that was last season, but they went there and won by 3-2. I cannot rule anything out. Wasuze Otia Oriotia. Hi Pedri, how are you doing? Nasuze Bulungi Oriotia Sebo. Pedri is greeting me in a domestic language. He said over the last 3 months he's been self-educating on the language. I think one of the things that I find very intelligent for one to have is somebody's capability to speak multiple languages. There's a guy I've seen on in my TikTok feed, and he literally speaks as many languages as there is. There's a young girl I've seen who speaks Mandarin, and it's always impressive to watch. When I find people, it's always fascinating for me when I find people speaking many languages. Oscar Bob last night goal, last minute goal. Anything can happen. Pedri says, I speak English, Spanish, Arabic, German, French, and Ganda. Wow. I wish somebody would teach me some Spanish and some French. I don't know. I find the pronunciation of German a little too hard, you know. I'm not saying Spanish is any easier or French, but when I hear people speak German, it's the way I hear people speaking Russian or Ukrainian, you know, and you're like, really? Does it have to be that hard? Hola, como estás? Pedri, there you have somebody trying to speak Spanish. I think he's greeting you, hola. You know, I think the only word that I remember trying to grasp, I don't even know if it's in Spanish or Mexican, or if any of the two are the same, or Espanol. It was, and it came from a movie. It was Etiendes. Do you understand? Understand, something like that. You know, I'll teach you Spanish. Buenos dias means good morning. Como estés means how are you? Wow. Okay. Hopefully I'll remember these lessons. Hopefully, no, Mexicano. Okay. Wow. Anyways, there's just so many languages in the world, but yeah, I'd really love to, you know, learn a couple of languages here and there. If the opportunity does present itself, really, it can be, they can come in handy, especially for people like we who have aspirations of traveling the world, if finances do permit us. But, you know, thank you so much. So those are my views on the Newcastle Manchester City game. I think at the end of it all, Manchester City are going to prove a little too strong for Newcastle. I believe that Pep Guardiola's clear message of the season officially begins. You do not begin the season by faltering. You begin it in the strongest way possible. And it's a message sending to Arsenal. Like I said, it's an opportunity for Man City to close the gap on Arsenal and put them under more pressure. They know, I think, if there's a manager in the Premier League over the last 9 years that knows the sort of grit of a title push, it is going to be Pep Guardiola. The other would have been Jurgen Klopp, but he's already out of the league. As we speak, I think Mikel Arteta is the second longest serving manager in the Premier League behind Pep Guardiola. You know, that's how much things have changed. Go to Man United, Ruben Amorim just made 1 year. Go to Fulham, Silva is not too long in. Go to Chelsea, Enzo Maresca is in his second season. Go to Liverpool, Arne Slot in his second season. Go to Tottenham Hotspurs, you know, Thomas Frank is in his debut campaign. So they've been and maybe Ed Howe comes close thereabout, you know. So really, they've not been so many changes. So Pep Guardiola knows a thing or two when it comes to a title pursuit. Aboba oiga olusipeini osobola okwogera ne Arteta ne Zubimendi. If I ever get to meet them, at least I'll say hola. Anyways, thank you. Quickly, guys. We already went through the fixtures. We would not. Okay, guys, give me your predictions. Liverpool, Nottingham Forest. Give me your predictions. I went for a Liverpool win. It's not going to be an easy game, but I'd want to. I don't know. I'm one of those that have consistently believed that Liverpool are suddenly going to wake up at some point, even though it's not happened as quickly as I would have loved it to happen. I remember it happening against Aston Villa. I had predicted that they would lose against Aston Villa, by the way, and they went on to win comfortably by 2-0. Real Madrid, I thought Real Madrid would win. Liverpool went and comfortably won by 0-0. Even though they could have scored much more in that game had it not been for the heroics of Thibaut Courtois, you know. So really, but ever since then, I've sort of had it in the back of my mind that suddenly we're going to have a resurgence of Liverpool, and you do predict that Liverpool will win by 2-1. Well, I went 2-1 Liverpool, I think. Then the other game that I wanted us to predict is Chelsea Burnley. Chelsea are up against Burnley in the early kickoff at 3:30 p.m. What do you make of that? I went for a 2-1 victory for Chelsea. I think 2-1, 3-1. I think I went 2-1 Chelsea. Even though it's going to be an away game, I think Chelsea sort of have that momentum in them to go ahead and beat up against Burnley, who are just hugging there about the relegation places. Then quickly, away from the Premier League, let's run to the Spanish La Liga. Last night, there was a game in the Spanish La Liga, and Valencia beat up against Levante by a 0-0, while in the German Bundesliga, Mainz and Hoffenheim shared the scores in a 1-1 draw. So quickly, in the Spanish La Liga, let's see what's to come in as far as this weekend is concerned. Deportivo Alaves are up against Celta Vigo. Barcelona returned to the Camp Nou, the Spotify Camp Nou, at 6:15 p.m. East African time when they take on Athletic Bilbao. Miss that fixture if you must. I predict it's going to be a very, very entertaining fixture. Barcelona are going to be hyped out, winning at least their first game on the return to the mighty Camp Nou. Of course, like Pedri told us the other day, they're going to be without Pedri as one of those injured players. I think, of course, the fixture does come a little too early, possibly for Marc-Andre ter Stegen. Not that he would start anyway. I do not know if Lamine Yamal has made it back. We know he missed the international break, having undergone a procedure on his groin. We know that Rafinha had been out for some time, but he had started stepping on the grass. So Marcus Rashford had suffered a knock during the international break. Then Gavi is out. So Frankie de Jong will miss this one through suspension for an indirect red card. So really, the same way Barcelona do not have it easy, I think on the other side, Inaki Williams could be a miss through a groin injury, as well as Unai on the side of Bilbao, and Marwan Sanadi will be some of the misses for Ernesto Valverde's side. However, maybe Nico Williams gets to sting Barcelona where it hurts the most, to say, perhaps you should have taken me up on that offer to sign me. Maybe it will be Alex Belenguer who makes the difference between the two sides, or will it be Gruzeta there to make the difference? Will it be Unai Simone's heroics in goal that go on to make the difference? So Pedri, what will be your prediction for Barcelona versus Athletic Bilbao? What are your impressions about the game? What are you looking forward to it? What do you make of it, really? Do let us know down in the comment section. Do let us know down in the comment section when it comes to your game. In the other fixture, Osasuna will be up against Real Sociedad at 8:30 p.m., while Villarreal at 11 p.m. will welcome Marocca. And then on Super Sunday, Rio Oviedo will be at home against Rayo Vallecano. Rayo Vallecano are one of the good sides. In as far as this season is concerned, I think they are up in 12th place, while Rio Oviedo are down bottom. So really should be an interesting fixture for Rayo Vallecano. Real Betis will be up against Girona. Getafe will welcome Atletico de Madrid, while in the late kickoff you will have Elche up against Real Madrid, and on Monday Night Football, Espanyol will be up against Sevilla. So that's to complete the weekend for the Spanish La Liga. Moving away from the Spanish La Liga, quickly in the German Bundesliga, you do have Augsburg up against Hamburg. Bayern Munich will take on Freiburg. Borussia Dortmund will be up against VfB Stuttgart. Heidenheim will be up against Borussia Mönchengladbach, while Wolfsburg and Bayer Leverkusen will face off with each other. And then FC Cologne will take on Eintracht Frankfurt there. Then quickly, on Sunday, what's to come on Sunday will be RB Leipzig up against Werder Bremen, while St. Pauli will take on Union Berlin. Mr. Tribe, I think we will win by 4-1. Wow. Okay. I mean, Bilbao haven't been great this season. They've had their struggles. Tribe, do you watch F1? I do not have as much access to sport as you may think of it. Uh, Things like subscription tend to trouble me. So I have a limited feed when it comes to my sport. But I would have loved to, whenever I have the time. Then when it comes to the NBA, if there's one sport that I would really, really love, but I often miss out on because of timelines, it's the NBA. Because what happens, NBA games start at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and yet I have to be early for my morning work routine, be early for my morning broadcast, and all the other things that I have to do across the day. So it's the one thing that I painfully miss, the NBA. Tribe, why can't I donate? Unfortunately, okay, you can donate, but unfortunately, because the channel is not yet monetized, I'm unable to put things like membership, to put things like donate, and and those kinds of things. But like I keep saying, if you guys keep supporting me and we reach the mark of 4,000 hours, we'll get to monetize, and then YouTube will give me more permissions in regards to what I can do with the channel. I want us to improve. Like I was telling you guys over time, we're intentional on improving on our audio, and I was able to. Somebody blessed me with these microphones. It's the Holy Land LAC A1 microphones. So to help, but whatever it is that you can always reach out. My socials are linked to the channel. You can reach out on Instagram, on X, on I think LinkedIn is also there, but I do not frequent LinkedIn. TikTok is also there. So yeah. Then Mr. Tribe, okay, you like Luka Doncic? Not really. I live in USA, so NBA I can watch. Wow, that's interesting. I mean, the person that made me fall in love with the NBA is no longer by a sports pundit. He left, I think, for either Netherlands or Denmark or Finland, one of those three countries, but most probably the Netherlands. And he would talk about the NBA, especially at the peak of Kobe Bryant, Stephen Curry, may his soul rest in peace, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and the way you used to speak about them, you just want to say, somebody buy me a TV and a decoder and I get to watch these guys play, really. So that's how I sort of fell in love with the NBA. Like, low-key, I do not know the ins and outs of the NBA, but every time I chance myself into a game, even if it's a replay, I'll try and catch it. And those nti F1 erina obuzibu bungi bw'oba okkiriziganyiza gamba weewaawo. buzibu ki obwo obungi bw'ogezaako gamba obuli mu F1. Meanwhile, there's an AI that can translate to Luganda. Yeah, I saw that. And then we also have a Ugandan that was doing a Luganda version of OpenAI in terms of teaching people the language. I do not know how far he's gone, but his name is called Felix Chitaka. He's a software developer. What was his name? Oh, the gentleman that made me fall in love with the NBA, he's called Moses. Moses who? Oh, I'm forgetting his second name. But the first name is Moses. Oh, I'm forgetting his other name. Really? Oh, geez, this is very unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, not Moises Caicedo. Not Moises Caicedo. Caicedo's height cannot play high school basketball. But anyways, yeah. Hopefully, we'll get there. Hopefully, baby steps. But we will see when it comes to that. So, anyways, that's what's to come in as far as the German Bundesliga is concerned. Then quickly, the Italian Serie A should be also getting underway. Now, speaking of the Italian Serie A, I think Como will have to wait until Monday to play. Como will be away to Torino. I do want to follow Como keenly because Cesc Fabregas he's recently become one of the hotcakes of managers that there is, young managers in European football. Anyways, Cagliari today will be up against Genoa. Udinese will take on Bologna. Fiorentina will be up against Juventus, and Napoli take on Atlanta at 10:45 p.m. On Super Sunday, Hellas Verona will be up against Parma. Cremonese will welcome AC Roma. Lazio will be up against Lecce, while we have the Milan derby on Super Sunday at 10:45 p.m. Between Inter Milan and AC Milan. Who do you think will carry the day? But on Monday, there will be two games between Como away to Torino at 8:30 p.m. and at 10:45 p.m. Sassuolo will be up against Pisa. AC Milan have had a fairly decent start to the campaign, and they're only 2 points behind Inter Milan. So it looks like it's going to be a huge battle between Simone Inzaghi and between Maximiliano Allegri and Christian Chivu in charge of AC Milan and Inter Milan respectively. You should bet on football games. Is betting legal in Uganda? Yeah, it's very legal, and there's plenty of betting in Uganda. Have a couple of friends who place bets. I quit betting, I think, in 2014. Should be around 2014 thereabout. I think around that, either 2013 or 2014, around that period. That's when I quit betting. And the reason for my quitting of betting is I'll give tips to my colleagues, and they would sometimes win, not always, but they would sometimes win. And then me, who gives out the tips, I end up losing because I tried to act smart. So I gradually stepped away from betting, and even when I give my predictions on here, I tend to say people, it's not for betting purposes. It's particularly just to give my predictions. So if I get it right, very nice feeling. If I get it wrong, very painful, but so be it. But when you predict, if you're predicting games to give people betting tips, it sort of puts you under a certain level of tension, as opposed to But there's so many modalities in betting these days. Under, over, halftime, over, what corners and red cards, etc. You should. Did you lose a lot? Yeah. I think I lost plenty during my high school vacation, and I wasn't betting huge amounts. I would bet for less than $1, and things like that. But predominantly I was betting on Premier League football, Spanish League football, and the English Championship. And yeah, I lost. I lost a good chunk of that. Small monies, but of course they accumulate with time. Ndaba kubanga osobola okufiirwa ssente nyingi kubanga omupiira togusuubirwa. Kibinyo. Yeah, you see, betting as it is. It's a gamble. It's a 50-50. There's 50% chance you win, there's 50% chance you lose. So, and the thing about betting that I also realized, there's so many things that can happen in a game that you may not have anticipated. So, for example, you could bet on Barcelona winning, and Hansi Flick thinks to himself, I have a midweek game against Chelsea that I should win, and he goes on and he rests players, and then before you know it, they've lost the game. And you're thinking to yourself, I did not envision him resting all these stars, So I did not envision an early red card in the game that changes the context of the game, that turns the game on its head. So there's so many modalities and things that can quickly change out of your favor when it comes to betting. There's so many moving parts. But yeah, there's a good number of people that bet and really, really benefit from it. So I cannot rule out on that. I just tell people, bet responsibly. Do not stake money that you will literally hang yourself for losing or wouldn't want to lose. So yeah, Anyways, guys, okay. Before we look to wrap this one up, there's also French League One. In the French League One, okay. Let me see where the fixtures. Jesus Christ. Okay. In the French League One, Lens will be up against Strasbourg, Rennes up against Monaco, PSG will be at home against Le Havre. So interesting things. Meanwhile, PSG this week are going to be up against Tottenham Hotspur in as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned. I followed you on Instagram. Thank you so much, Jesus. I'll reciprocate after this broadcast. Otherwise, guys, why don't you allow me call it a wrap? It's been 1 hour and 40 minutes. Thank you so much, Jesus, for expounding on our debate. Thank you so much for pushing my views, expounding on my limits. In these debates, you enrich my knowledge. You show me different dimensions of arguments and perspectives on things. Thank you so much, Pedri. Continue with your Luganda lessons. I hope you keep learning. I hope you guys one day get the chance to come and visit Uganda. I'll be here to welcome you in case you made the choice to visit Uganda one day. So yeah, but thank you so much for the love and support. Thank you so much for the kindness. It's been wonderful doing this with you. For our usual suspects, all of you that did not like the broadcast, did not leave a comment, thank you so much. YouTube solo. Thank you. So let's link up again tonight at 11 p.m. To discuss whatever the results will have been in some of those respective games as we've enlisted them. Otherwise, have a blessed weekend and yeah, go and enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye for now.